You know the saying, in 49 other states, it's just basketball. It's the same line that Pacers coach Rick Carlisle used after the team beat the New York Knicks on May 31st, securing the team's first Eastern Conference championship in 25 years. But it's not just a hollow quip, paying lip service to fans. It's a rally cry, reverberating through the halls of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, echoed by Pacers and Fever players alike. It's a reality. Basketball is in our blood. So when the WNBA, still in its infancy, came knocking at the state's door in 1999, it found a city all too eager to embrace it, even as other cities were turning down the opportunity because they saw no value proposition in the business of women's sports, let alone women's basketball.
It was an exciting time. This city was really ready for a pro-women's team.
From the time the team was announced to the time it began play in the summer of 2000, a mix of excitement and skepticism permeated the city's collective consciousness. It came at a time when the Pacers franchise was having a moment of its own, led by coach Larry Bird and all-star player Reggie Miller. But the inflection point for women's basketball, and for women's sports as a whole, that we're seeing now didn't come easily. Even for all the basketball fans in the city, only a small portion were on board for supporting the team. While the early 2000s saw the Pacers consistently draw sellouts or close to it, the Fever struggled to fill even the lower two bowls of what was then known as Conseco Fieldhouse. Most college and professional basketball fans saw the WNBA as a lesser product, and arguably many still do. That's even with the women's college game catching the attention of fans through the popularity of dynasties like Tennessee and UConn during the late 1990s and into the new millennium. The truth is, the Fever have been at every rung of the league's ladder, from the very bottom to WNBA champions, usually falling somewhere in the middle. Now, for the first time in nearly a decade, the Fever are back in a position to chase greatness. I'm Mickey Shuey, and this is Beyond Clarkonomics, a podcast by the Indianapolis Business Journal. Throughout this episode, we'll examine what it took to grow interest in the Fever as the team got started. We'll explore the influence of another star player, Tamika Catchings, on the team's play and perceptions. We'll unravel the ups and downs of the franchise, from final runs to last team in the standings. All of this helps us understand how the team got to where it is today. A roster full of bona fide all-stars, and a front office and coaching staff full of familiar faces, and with a fan base that far exceeds what many of the team's first fans and franchise leaders ever imagined possible. In 49 other states, it's just basketball. But this is Indiana.
The number 1 overall draft pick in 2024. Let's hear it. Caitlin Clark to Indiana.
Caitlin Clark is an American icon.
I can't think of a better place for myself to start my career. A place that loves basketball, supports women's basketball.
Everything came together perfectly for the Indiana Fever.
This giant opportunity to cast Indy as a place to visit.
This is Beyond Clarkonomics.
In the mid-1990s, the popularity of women's basketball was on the rise. Pat Summitt's Tennessee teams were dominating, but soon faced stiff competition from Gino Auriemma and the UConn Huskies. UConn burst onto the scene in a big way in the mid-1990s, and really hasn't looked back since. The team won 10 national championships in the 20-year span between 1995 and 2015. Just a few years earlier, the idea of a women's professional basketball league in the U.S. barely registered, but by the mid-90s, momentum was building fast. The Olympics were around the corner, and suddenly 2 leagues sprung up in hopes of enticing superstar players to continue their basketball careers after college. They fought to sign the top talent, with a heavy focus on players from the U.S. national team, like Cheryl Swoops and Lisa Leslie.
There was a lot of excitement around the idea, but when you settle in and you try to become a sports business, which means you have to have paying customers every night, and you need national television partners, and you need corporate partners, and all of those things that sort of makes your business go.
Kelly Krauskopf helped launch the WNBA, before later moving to oversee the Fever after Indianapolis was awarded an expansion franchise in 1999.
You have your what we sort of call the honeymoon year, the first year where everybody's excited, and then you get into years 2, 3, and 4, and now you're starting to settle in and see who's really a fan of the sport, who's really a fan of your team. The brand name speaks for itself. It's the WNBA. So you have a tie to the NBA, which is the best league for men in the world, and we're the best league for women in the world. But, it was also at a time where not a lot of people, as what we see today, weren't sure that is women's basketball really worth my money? Is this something that's really that important to our country and the American sports culture? You had years where you had to kind of prove it. You had to prove that you belonged in the same conversation in the sports landscape.
The lone player from the 1996 U.S. Olympic team to not sign with the ABL was Rebecca Lobo. Now a commentator for ESPN who covers the WNBA and college basketball, Lobo, along with Swoops and Leslie, were the first players to sign with the WNBA during its formation in 1996, ahead of an inaugural 1997 season. But the WNBA had the full backing of the NBA, which observers and sports reporters thought meant it had a better shot at surviving and thriving long term. And while the ABL generally was viewed as the more player-friendly league at the start, with better pay and a more conventional season, it didn't last long. The league ceased operations during the 1998 to 1999 season after 2 full seasons of play.
There wasn't much exposure at all to women's basketball. When I was a kid, if you were playing basketball, you were generally playing with the boys. When I signed up to play in my rec league in my town when I was in 4th grade, there were only 2 girls signed up. So I was the only girl who ended up playing on an all-boys team. And that was common in those days. So nobody who was of my age had any real ambition to play professional basketball in the U.S. You could, after you graduated from college, go overseas and play for a few years, make a little bit of money. The biggest dream of my era, women of my era had, was to play in college and then play for a USA basketball team, potentially play for an Olympic team, a couple years overseas. It's this really interesting time where you're going from having no professional leagues, not even much talk of women's professional leagues here in the U.S., to this real groundswell of interest around women's basketball.
It was an exciting time. This city was really ready for a pro women's team. I think at the time there were more girls that played the sport of basketball in the state of Indiana than anywhere in the country. And it was an easy decision for the league to place a franchise in Indiana and then to also be operated by the Pacers group, because this is one of the best in the business in terms of how to run a pro franchise.
Ensuring a spot for Indianapolis in the league was no easy task. Pacers Sports Entertainment and the other expansion clubs were given a mandate by the WNBA to secure 5,500 season ticket deposits before they're formally awarded a team and incorporated into the league. At that point, the team was still without a name, but there was a strong push to get fans on board. Among the most notable were Tony Gwynn, now a Baseball Hall of Famer, and Pacers head coach Larry Bird, both of whom signed on for season tickets in the process. And the father of Title IX, former Senator Birch Bayh, put the Fever over the 5,500 mark on October 1st, 1999, 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
We had all the resources that we needed to get started. We had all the support. We had full bandwidth from everyone. So launching it was really a really exciting time.
The Indiana Fever joined a league that launched with 8 teams, but had already quickly expanded to 12. In 2000, alongside the Fever, the Miami Soul, Seattle Storm, and Portland Fire entered the league. At that point, most of the teams were concentrated along the East Coast and out west, but the Midwest was gaining ground. The Cleveland Rockers were one of the league's original teams, with the Detroit Shock and the Minnesota Lynx joining in 1998 and 1999, respectively. In the league's first 4 seasons, there was a singular WNBA champion, as the Houston Comets dominated both in the regular season and postseason play. Kimberly Harms Robinson is a former sportscaster at Wish TV in Indianapolis, who covered the Indiana Fever's first 3 seasons. She previously covered the Houston Comets' first few seasons at a Texas television station. From the get-go, the weekend sports anchor immersed herself in the culture around women's basketball in hopes of better understanding the impact the WNBA and the Fever could have as they tipped off.
Women were ready. Young girls and women had been waiting years and years. They had been working hard on the court, working hard in the weight room, working hard to study the game. And so this was their opportunity to shine. And I think people were ready for it. They watched Purdue win the national championship. They watched Tennessee win the national championship, and people made a name for themselves in those championships, especially with the NCAA moving to Indianapolis. I think it was just the logical next step.
Krosskoff said while it was rare for venues to be fully sold out game after game, there were attendance peaks in each season that coincided with visits from well-known players in other markets and annual family days and other community-focused theme nights, things that still remain today. That cemented the draw of the WNBA, a family-friendly league. In Indiana and some other markets, she saw opportunities for growth, partially due to the youth sports culture and because potential fan bases were already engrossed in the college game, but hadn't gone all in on women's pro sports quite yet. Krosskoff saw so much potential in Indianapolis, she said, that she left her role with the league and moved to Indiana to help launch the Fever.
When I was in the league office, I traveled to all the cities at the time, and we only started with 8 franchises. To be a national league, you need more teams. You need to be across the country so that people all over the country are experiencing your league. Those were great early indicators that there really were fans. We always said that sometimes fans of college women's basketball weren't necessarily fans of pro basketball. They were fans of Pat Summitt, or they were fans of Gina Auriemma, or some of the college programs that were dominating at the time. But they weren't watching us, and they weren't following those players, in the way that we needed them to, like what we see today. So I think those were the stages that we had to get through in terms of growing the league, growing the fan base, and certainly the investment.
My name is Katie Douglas. I played 14 seasons in the WNBA, 5 of which were with the Indiana Fever.
A graduate of Perry Meridian, Katie Douglas played basketball for Purdue alongside current Fever head coach Stephanie White. She was drafted by the Orlando Miracle in 2001.
For me as a player, I'm like starstruck playing against a lot of these women and then having some of these women as my teammates. From I think a fan standpoint, I definitely think that people were still questioning women's basketball. Is it a real sport? Is it something that we can get down with, get on board with? There was an excitement when the first WNBA games were going on, that first inaugural season, but I think that excitement died off when I got drafted in 2001. So I think we were still trying to pave a way. So I think that there was, there's always just people just trying to knock you down when you're trying to start something. So I definitely feel like I came into the WNBA when there was a lot more criticism than there was support.
Douglas spent most of her playing career in Connecticut before moving to the Fever in 2009. In 2002, the NBA decided to sell off its ownership of each WNBA team. Those went to new groups after the league abdicated its role as manager and operator in favor of a franchise format through a new WNBA entity. That transition led to an extensive upheaval across the league, as several teams traded hands to new operators or failed to secure support for direct ownership, leading to their demise. Following the 2003 season, 3 WNBA teams folded: the Miami Soul and Portland Fire, which had come in just 2 years prior, and the league original Cleveland Rockers. The Fever, though, remained under the control of brothers Herb and Mel Simon and their families, alongside the Pacers. The Orlando Miracle, which drafted Douglas, was the first team not to be affiliated with an ownership group for an NBA team. It was sold to the Mohegan Native American tribe, which relocated the team to Uncasville, Connecticut, about 1 hour southeast of Hartford. The move also placed the team about 45 minutes south of the University of Connecticut, at the time riding a wave of success that was driving extensive interest in women's basketball across a large swath of the northeastern United States. Newly renamed, the Sun played in an arena with seating for up to 9,300 fans.
At the time, I thought Mohegan Sun was perfect for women's basketball because it wasn't so large where if you didn't fill it up, it felt empty. We were drawing between 8 and 10, maybe at Mohegan Sun on average, where, when I first got to Indiana, we weren't drawing near capacity. So when you're playing in those kind of arenas, big NBA arenas, and you're not drawing big, it does feel pretty empty.
To make arenas feel more full, teams often would put up curtains to make the room appear smaller and hide empty seats. The curtains at Fever games stayed up for several seasons. The Fever struggled in their first few years out of the gate, finishing in the bottom quarter of the league every year until 2005. And while they were a big draw in year one for attendance, drawing more than 11,000 fans per game, the seasons that followed saw that number dip down to 8,000 to 8,500 per game.
I remember feeling like the city just couldn't get enough. They wanted more and more early on. There might have been some people who were looking for women or girls to be more moody or not be as strong or those kinds of things, but they were quickly proven wrong. And I feel like the attendance grew with time. So the more people heard about them, the more people saw, then the more people attended the games. Especially, I think a real turning point was when they drafted Tamika Catchings, and everybody knew who she was, not only from, she just has more hardware than just about anybody I can think of in terms of awards and accolades for the play of her game. So it naturally grew once she joined the team.
Despite Catchings' notoriety, attendance didn't necessarily reflect broad interest. The Fever fell below 8,000 fans per game for the first time during the 2004 season, averaging just under 7,600, nearly last in the league. While it rebounded the next year to about 8,400, that success was brief. The team didn't get back to the 8,000s until 2010 and dropped again with the 2012 season. Douglas said she can still remember the feeling she had during the 2012 season, when the building was opened up for games entirely. That was the same year that the Fever won its first and so far only WNBA championship.
I 100% remember those days when the black curtains would cover that second and third tier of those big NBA arenas to make it feel a little bit more intimate, to make it feel more crowded. I distinctly remember when we were making our playoff run with the Fever in 2012 when we won the championship. Those curtains were lifted and it was so cool to see the city of Indianapolis get behind that team when we made that playoff run and during that entire season in 2012 and make that run and be able to win a championship here in Indiana and those curtains come down because we were selling out.
For Kroscoff, who led the Fever from 1999 through 2018 and is now back at the helm, there were some sleepless nights and hard conversations around the future of the team. But was she ever concerned about the franchise's long-term stability?
All the time. You're always thinking about next year. For me, here in Indiana, I always felt like the only way to stay relevant is to win, because people are bandwagoners. They want to follow a winner. No matter what you are, no matter what you're doing, my strategy was always to try to put the best possible team on the floor around Tamika Catchings that I could and get in the playoffs and give ourselves a chance to win every year. So around that was, as you travel around the country and you saw some buildings that were pretty empty and then you saw other buildings that weren't empty. We always had a sustained amount of people here, a sustained fan base that wasn't as big as it is today, but it was as big as what the market would bring at that time. I think for those of us who were in it in those years, we just knew that there was a societal piece that once people saw women of value in the sports landscape, they would feel like this is a good enough product for us to really invest in, which means buying a ticket or buying the merchandise or whatever those things are. So it just takes time. It's a slow growth stock. You invest in stock and it takes sometimes 10 years to really pay off. And I just knew from a societal standpoint that women aren't going to go away. Dads aren't going to stop wanting their daughters to have the same opportunities as their sons. And there will be an inflection moment. I don't know when it is. We knew that we saw the growth at the college level, which impacted the WNBA level because those players are coming. That's our feeder league.
I am Rachel Eisenbarger, and I am a current Fever season ticket holder since 2017, but I've been a fan of the Fever since 2000.
While thousands of people are clamoring for Fever season tickets these days, that wasn't always the case. The early pledges of 5,000 season tickets that got the team into the league quickly dwindled after the allure of the league wore off, or new priorities for those ticket holders came into play. But that's not to say there aren't folks in central Indiana who have been longtime fans of the club. For Eisenbarger, The league was an opportunity to see women play at a level she could previously have only dreamed of. She attended numerous games during the team's inaugural season with her dad, who she said saw a tremendous amount of value to the Fever, both as a franchise and as a set of role models for local kids.
I guess as a kid, I was so excited. I don't think I thought to look at the fan size. I knew it was different, but I wasn't concerned with that. I was just so excited about being at the game and being there and supporting the game. Obviously, when I was older, I started to really take that in, middle school, high school, into college, realizing the base was significantly smaller from going to other games. So it took a while for that to really sink in. But for the most part, I know attendance has always kind of been on that lower end.
The Fever's run to the 2012 WNBA championship was the first title for the city since the Colts won the Super Bowl in 2006. It was fresh off the excitement of the city hosting the Super Bowl for the first time, and just over 1 year removed from the city's second turn hosting the NCAA Women's Basketball Final Four. It was a capstone for Tamika Catchings, too, as she became one of just a handful of women to earn a FIBA World Cup gold medal, an NCAA championship, an Olympic gold medal, and a WNBA championship. But championships don't solve all problems. Just because the interest around women's sports was changing didn't mean the league was making more money. For players, that meant playing overseas in the off-season to supplement their WNBA income, which historically and presently is significantly lower than the NBA player salaries.
When I got drafted, I said it was just a whirlwind. And I felt like every year was just a whirlwind for me as a player personally, just because you would go to whatever WNBA city. You were so excited about living in the United States because you'd been abroad. So you'd come back in, you'd come with your 2-3 bags that weighed under 70 pounds at the time. You could take overseas. So you would take your prized possessions with you. You'd go to your WNBA city, take those bags, change out your stuff because you got winter stuff generally. So now you need your summer stuff. You'd change your stuff and then you'd play that summer, change your bag, and literally you'd go back overseas. So a lot of people don't understand that part of the game. But I just wanted to play basketball, not just to make money, but I was always trying to also get better and be able to showcase that in the WNBA. And I felt like overseas was a big part of how I became able to continue to grow and develop as a WNBA player. Was playing, a big part of it was playing overseas.
Tamika Catchings announced in late 2014 that she planned to retire from the WNBA after the 2016 season. While not a shock, it did reverberate within the Fever organization, as the 10-time All-Star and former MVP had been at the heart of the team for more than a decade. For Rebecca Lobo, the basketball analyst, there was a lot of concern about what the future could look like for the Fever, even with the championship under its belt, particularly as Tamika stepped away from the court.
I can remember covering the playoff run. I can remember the year that they went to the championship and won it, feeling like the attendance for those playoffs and finals games close to, if not sold out arena, and the vibe in the city and the excitement in the city for the Indiana Fever being sky high. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, this franchise, this team needed this, because it felt like a franchise at times leading up to that you were worried if they were going to move, if they were going to be sold, if they were going to fold. Like, it just felt, covering that finals, like, wow, this city, this franchise needed this, not only to thrive, but to survive at all.
But they didn't stay on that high. While per-game attendance rose to about 8,600 fans during Catchings' final season, the crowds started dropping off quickly. In 2017, crowds averaged around 7,500 fans. The following season, 6,300. By 2019, attendance was just under 5,900 per game. But as Croscott puts it, while she did have moments of concern, she never had doubts about the league or the Fever as a franchise.
I always felt like, look, the NBA wasn't going to give up on this league. I think there were new owners wanting to come in. There were cities that still wanted to come into the league. Having lean years is just a part of the business. People forget in 1985, the Pacers were about to go out of business until somebody saved them, named Herb Simon and Mel Simon, and kept the team in Indianapolis. Every league goes through that. Every team goes through that, especially when you're starting out. You just knew that as we grew as a league, add more cities, again, the groundswell's happening at the college level, there was going to be a moment. And a lot of that is we had to do it. We being women's sports, women's basketball had to do it. We had to really use our own playbook, if you will, because traditional media wasn't really covering us. We had to do it on our own. And when women we had to tell our own stories.
Even so, the WNBA is still generally seen as a money-losing venture. And in fact, it remains largely subsidized by the NBA. That subsidy, which ranges anywhere from $10 million to $15 million annually, helps keep the WNBA financially sound. While the league is expected to bring in $1 billion in revenue this year, it's also coming off a season where it lost an estimated $40 million. While Tamika Catchings returned to the Fever in 2017 as part of its front office, that move came at a time where things were beginning to go downhill, both in attendance and performance. Regardless of what resources and solutions ownership group Pacers Sports and Entertainment was throwing at the issue. In 2018, Kelly Kroskoff was presented an opportunity to become the first assistant general manager for an NBA team in 40 years through a role with the Pacers. Coincidentally, the Pacers were the last team to do the same, with Nancy Leonard serving as general manager alongside her husband and Pacers coach Bobby Leonard. Longtime public servant Allison Barber was brought in to lead the Fever as president, and quickly helped add some excitement around the team. But over the years, there was a revolving door of coaches that came and went. From 2019 through 2022, the team had a combined record of 30 wins and 94 losses, getting worse with each season. During that same span, there were 3 different coaches.
It was hard to get invested in some of the players because, I think it was just they weren't meshing as well. There was a lot of change over time. It was definitely a rough time. And seeing how they interacted with the coaches and everything, too, it just felt like just something was off for a long time. And again, this franchise had such a strong foothold for the longest time with Linda, the office that they had, and then to just kind of lose it all overnight as Tamika left. And even then they lost Tamika as a GM. So they brought her in and now she's no longer with the whole program. And that was tough to watch that.
It was also during this time that the team shifted from its downtown venue to other non-NBA venues, like the Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum and Hinkle Fieldhouse on the Butler University campus. For their part, executives with Pacers Sports and Entertainment told IBJ that there was never consideration of moving the Fever out of Gainbridge Fieldhouse on a permanent basis. But that's not to say it wasn't plainly obvious that the team was struggling mightily to get back to its previous success. For Eisenbarger, now a season ticket holder of 8 years, it still created certain amounts of anxiety.
I was worried for a while. It just felt they got pushed out because of all the Gainbridge updates. They were playing at the State Fairgrounds and at Butler. They're all over the place. Attendance was down. Games were rough. I was worried about the state of the franchise. I kept trying to dig my heels in and say, come on, we need support for this team. We need to get people out here.
And for Kelly Kroskoff, there was always hope in those bad years that the fortunes might turn. Then they finally did.
You needed to have a couple of bad years to get hype. I hate to say it, but that's really how it works. There's no other way to get great players. That's how Seattle got Sue Bird. That's how Phoenix got Dinah Taurasi. That's how you build teams. And that's how the Colts get the best quarterback they can get. You got to have a bad year. And unfortunately, we had some bad years here during that time. And it was during the time the building was being remodeled. They weren't in the building. I just felt so bad for Tamika and the group that was here running it. And they were playing games at various places and just being moved around the city. So those were tough years. But, with those tough years, we got 2 number 1 picks in a row. And now you've just relaunched and restarted your franchise all over again.
While no attendance figures were reported for 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Fever were dead last in the category in 2022, drawing just under 1,800 fans per game. That was while playing at multiple venues in the city throughout the Fieldhouse renovations. The 2023 season, which brought Aaliyah Boston to the team, saw the Fever win more games than they had in the previous 2 seasons combined. It also saw a modest increase in attendance to about 4,100 fans per game, good enough for second to last in the league. Then, in 2024, the tide shifted even further, with the Fever again landing number 1 in the draft. That paved the way for the team to pick up Caitlin Clark, but we've already talked about that. Fast forward to the end of that season. On the heels of the team's first playoff appearance in 8 years, the team had skyrocketed to the top of the league with attendance nearly 74% higher than the league's average. But the leadership moves still weren't over. The team fired Christy Sides after 2 seasons and brought back Stephanie White. It brought in longtime sports marketer and executive Amber Cox. And, despite her initial protests, the team also brought back Kroskoff.
Initially, I was like, look, I came here 18 years ago to start the team. It's okay. I had my time. That was my time. That was my generation. That was my group. You guys can take this. And the appeal was, help us do this, help us put this back, help us put this pointed back in the right direction, make sure the staff's all set up, make sure you've done this before, you've got us pointed in the right direction. For me personally, it was an opportunity to maybe finish on a note I feel like I can really be of service and be helpful in a leadership role. It certainly is an exciting time to walk in the building after all those years and see so many people enjoying what we knew we had. We just couldn't break through to get people to pay attention. So that's very gratifying and really thrilling to see, honestly. This is where my heart is. I've been in women's sports and certainly the WNBA like my whole career. It pulled on the heartstrings a little bit. And so here we are, back on the bicycle again.
All of that, Kroskoff and others say, has led the team to where it is now. It's creating an opening, a rare opportunity for the Fever to build something even greater than the sum of its parts. It centers on a core of players like Lexi Hall and Kelsey Mitchell, both of whom had seen the team at its worst and still stuck it out. And of course, it incorporates Boston and Clark into the mix, who have positioned the team to be at its best. For fans like Rachel Eisenberger, the feeling of seeing that turnaround now underway is beyond anything she could have ever imagined. And of course, it offers some vindication.
Everyone is paying attention. It's fun to be able to talk about this stuff a lot more and to know that people are watching more. But then I feel like I find myself still being like, hey, I've been a fan for a long time. Like, I didn't just start watching them. It's fun. It's a fun atmosphere. It's exciting to see everyone come together. And I think the energy around it is exciting. It's fun to watch everyone get engaged with the players and the personalities come out. So I think right now, it's a fun time to be a fan.
Next time on Beyond Clarkonomics, we'll explore what the Fever is now building, both metaphorically and literally. We'll also look at how that sets the stage for what insiders and experts believe could be another consequential and impactful run for the franchise. And we'll begin looking at what could be on the horizon for the league and women's sports in Indianapolis.
I think we just scratched the surface. Again, it's about creating new assets that are very authentic to us, making sure that they're aligned in what we stand for as an organization. But yeah, the momentum isn't slowing. And I think as women's sports continues to pick up that momentum, it just gives us even more fuel to remain and be the epicenter of that and really lead.
Beyond Clarkonomics is a production of IBJ Media. This episode was reported and written by Mickey Shuey and edited by Holly Hayes. The audio engineer and producer is Chris Spangle. Leslie Weinbender is executive editor of the Indianapolis Business Journal. Nate Beltman, owner and publisher. A special thanks to Fox 59 and CBS 4 for audio, with additional production assistance from Michelle Kaufman, Daniel Bradley, and Michael Kirsch. Artwork by Ashley Day. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.